afternoon, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed your lunch and you are ready for a great conversation today on the IT Leaders Innovation Toolkit. My name is Jamie Boyce. I am the VP of Technology and Innovation, which is one of my actual favorite subjects, and I'm really excited to welcome you guys today. So thank you all for joining us. Maybe we could start off with some introductions. Dave?
Yeah, so I'm Dave Boschman, based here in Montreal. I lead our data in the IT, or sales specialist at Microsoft. Coming on 4 years ahead of national role.
Welcome. Mike?
Thank you. Mike Gooley. I'm the president and founder of Clearview Executive Search, based out of the Toronto area. We do routine executive search, a lot of work in IT and financial services.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm Will Hall. I'm the IT manager at Blue Drop Training and Simulation in Halifax. We're a defense contractor with about 150 employees and 80 companies.
Excellent, thank you guys. Innovation. Well, this subject is ever growing, and for us, specifically on my side of the house at Quadbridge, innovation is absolutely key to what we do. We are always trying to innovate wherever possible, either through people, through process, through systems, and it's such an amazing time in technology to embrace that. So I think first of all, what I wanted to ask you, Dave, was really the strategies that Microsoft have really found effective for embedding innovation and into the daily habits of IT teams.
There's a couple of things. First off, when Satya came on as our CEO a few years ago, he brought in this idea of a learn-it-all mindset. And the intent is to use that learn-it-all instead of know-it-all. Nobody wants to be with a know-it-all. It's very annoying. And the reality is, as you're innovating, no one really has the answers. There's some answers that we have, but a lot of the answers we don't have. So the other thing that it requires to get into that learn-it-all mindset is thinking about growth. And what that means is allowing our people for some room to grow, giving our people the ability to get outside of that CYA, to use the term, fixed mindset, and thinking, I don't want to be in this fixed mindset where I'm stressed all the time. I gotta get room to grow, make this a fun place to work, have it be exceptional, and then drive collaboration. So those three ingredients coming together, that learn-it-all mindset, the growth, and then be able to collaborate with each other, is what really helps drive the innovation as a team.
So learn it all, growth, mindset. Excellent. Mike, Will, over to you. So how can IT leaders balance fostering creativity with the need to meet day-to-day operational demands? This is one of the challenges, right? It's how do we innovate, but also how do we maintain our existing operations? Could you kind of give us some?
Yeah, so when I started in this role 5 years ago, I was inheriting a company that was struggling. They had had a data loss event prior, their cybersecurity posture was weak, and they were a defense contractor. So I had to embrace change immediately, and I had to think I almost felt like my brain was split in two halves, where on one hand I was trying to swim and keep the business going, and on the other hand, every situation I was always taking notes and documenting it as effectively as saying, okay, I'm dealing with this issue right now, I hate this issue, how do I make it not happen again? I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to put in something preventative going forward. And also, I find in defense contracting, not being out front is actually a good posture. But I also had to have a good culture of, again, like being comfortable with change, being comfortable with iterating, always changing and improving, because I found that instead of putting all this effort into one big change, it was like, well, let's get it running and build the plane in flight, and then we'll get something that's even better because it's based on experience.
Yeah, so that kind of balance of really kind of understanding what the end user community is looking for, but also keeping in consideration that we have to have a secure environment. We have to, make sure that we're really taking into consideration the cybersecurity side of things. So yeah, great. Mike, so what role does recruitment play in building a culture? of innovation, and how can we attract forward-thinking talent?
It's a great question. From a retained executive search standpoint, bringing in innovative leaders, the good news is that you're sitting in the heart of a group of people where innovation is thriving throughout your organizations, right? So we look first to the IT world and clients. We look first to IT companies, technology groups. Innovation often sits in technology. So when companies are looking to bring innovation in, change their culture, you can do it internally, but if you're doing it from an external perspective, they would look to companies that are doing a lot of innovation, and it can be across the functions. So while IT and innovation can be their own group or within IT, CIO, CTO, Chief Innovation Officer, VP Director, etc. There's also innovation in finance. There's innovation in marketing. There's innovation across the organization. So the people we would look for people who are leading it now, whether it's in the innovation group or within a functional group and doing a lot of innovation. And we would ask a lot of questions about, so tell me what you've done. Tell me about how you decide what you're going to innovate. Sometimes it's a requirement. It could be cybersecurity, it could be tools, innovation that teams need. And then how do you do it? What's the process? Is there a framework that you're following it? Is it agile innovation, that kind of thing? So we would go pretty deep on how they do it, what they're doing, and what they've done. You know, as I often say, what you've done in the past is the best predictor of what you'll be able to do in the future. So if you've done some innovation and you've been on some projects with innovation, you probably have a pretty good idea of what it is, and you can continue doing it and learning more about it. So.
Absolutely, you know, that's it. It really rings true to me. Innovation isn't just a technology thing. It's a company-wide thing. Innovation needs to take place across all of the different business units, all of the different operations that we run. So that's great. We're also supporting innovations at its core. How do you blend traditional support mechanisms while enabling innovative technologies such as virtual and augmented reality in your space? I've been reading up about Blue Drop, and I'm very interested to hear your take on that.
Well, yeah, so don't do it now, but do look up Blue Drop on YouTube. There's some very interesting videos there about the things we do. And you know, primarily what we do is we build simulators you know, for aircraft hoisting and things of that nature. We partner up with other contractors. So yeah, so we're operating an environment in a secure way, you know, with a strive towards a cybersecurity certification that can enable further opportunities. Meanwhile, we have a group of developers and engineers that are, you know, trying to connect things into our network that I may not want. You know, the easy answer for the IT manager or someone that's responsible for security is to say, no, don't connect it. But they have to connect it. So then you're looking at, you know, how do I utilize tools like my network access control system to, you know, allow that device onto the network, but restrict it down to only the capabilities that's permitted to do. But that's what I've always found is, you know, one part of me is try not to move too quickly because we have, you know, all these requirements. We've made tremendous investments. I'm sure many of you know how quickly you can, you know, lose sight on a certain system if you're not careful with your policy creation. So, you know, I always have to balance that with the business needs to innovate to be successful, and I have to enable that. So I have to kind of carry both of them at once.
Do you get to fly these simulators? Do you get to play with the tools too?
I don't check out the hoist simulators enough, but it's my previous job. I was a technician on flight simulators, and when you deal with the full flight, which I flew all the time, going back to the hoist trainers, it's a downgrade. So. Yeah.
I actually flew from Montreal to London a couple of months ago on Microsoft Flight Simulator. It took 7 hours, and it was an interesting. I'm sure that's next level.
I don't want to get into my flight sim setup at home too much, but I've spent a bunch of money, and it won't come any closer to getting me to what I want. Is the real thing. I want the hydraulics and projectors, and yeah.
Awesome. Dave, so what are the key metrics or indicators IT leaders should use to measure the success of innovation or innovative initiatives?
For sure, like for us, we were customer zero launching Copilot internally at Microsoft. So that's a good example where we're looking at daily usage, monthly usage, etc. So there's always those metrics. Like, if you're rolling out a new tool, if you're rolling out a new process, are people using it, and are they happy with it? And so that's the first part, just measuring the basics. The other one is asking people, what is their feedback? How are they doing? We've got a pretty good feedback culture. And we try to encapsulate it into some very short questions, asking people like, does this meet your standards? Is it helping you with productivity? Are you able to use it to get to where you need to be? And what else can we do? And so we base a lot of those questions on the latest research around neuroscience and really get a sense of how our teams are doing. But also if it's too much of a top-down approach and it feels heavy-handed, or are they feeling like they can use these tools that they're actually bringing something? So there's kind of both. There's the hard metrics, and then there's the softer metrics of measuring the emotional or kind of that, navigating through the gap of how people are feeling. If you ignore that second part, the first part's a little easier to do, but if you ignore the second part, that's where a lot of these initiatives fail, because you tend to ignore the culture piece.
Yeah, the human aspect of technology, right? It's so important. It's so key to what we do. For us at QuadBridge, we have a team of very talented individuals that have a very diverse set of skills, and it's really about collaboration. It's about bringing everybody to the table, giving everybody a voice in terms of the sort of the new initiatives that we take on board. So, what are some of the standout areas when you're looking to hire for innovation, Mike?
So one of the areas that I didn't mention actually, which is a big area, research and development. So when you think about organizations that are doing innovation, research and development is another area. And you're looking at individuals who have made change, run large projects, innovated, and taken things or created. So you think of the product side, first of all, you're creating new products, like Microsoft, like other companies, that kind of thing. Then there's innovation, which is process. So we talk about people, process, and tools, technology. So you're looking at people who have done both of those things, separate roles. The product is very different than innovation through a process, projects, implementations, etc. Right? So we look at all different kinds of things, depending on what the innovation is. Is it an innovation where it's a people process large project, or is it more product related, a little more technical maybe, and a lot more engineering, architecture, etc.
It's a great time to do business, especially in Quebec, in terms of different government incentives. We leverage SHRED. For example, SHRED gives us the ability to offset some of our expenditures with different R&D programs that we run internally, and that's a big help for obviously the budget of my department and a number of others. So if you are doing business in Quebec or really in Canada, then we should certainly look into those types of government incentives that allow you to really start to leverage R&D and offset some of that cost. So, what are some of the best ways to access candidates for an innovative mindset, Mike? So I've done a lot of work in IT functional roles as well as strategy, and so depending on where you're looking, technology companies, of course, consulting firms as well. You get a mindset and a framework around solving issues, implementing technology from consulting firms. So depending on what you're looking for, there's a lot of different places. So I'm not ruling out someone working in the aviation field who was doing innovation at an airport, putting in technology, and the whole, that's changed over the last 15 years incredibly. So it could be anywhere, but we look specifically for people from consulting firms, technology, and the industry that the client is looking for. So I mentioned aviation. You're looking for someone who's got a lot of experience with respect to upgrading
the technology at an airport and the innovation there, for example, just as an example, you go to people who've worked at airports who've done it before. So the simple answer is we go to the industry first because that's what we're getting paid to do, and then we start to expand the search to other areas, consulting firms, etc., and technology.
Excellent. At this point, actually, I would like to open it up to the audience. If anybody does have a question for anyone on the panel, yes, we do have a question at the back there.
Hi guys, sorry, English language. Access versus assess. Assess candidates for an innovative mindset. Just wanted to add that, that's all. Assessing candidates? Assessing.
So it'd be, probably go back to that first part of the first answer where I was talking about interviewing people and assessing candidates. There are a lot of great questions that you can ask, and I sort of touched on it a little bit, asking about what have you done in innovation. So it's, how do you know what you're going to do to innovate? How are you going to prioritize? Companies going to have a list of things you're going to want to do. From our standpoint, assessing people, I'm Hogan certified, so when it comes to not just the interview, but after that, you can run a test and you can look at the results that come up on Hogan. And there is actually an innovation portion to that, and you can get a sense that combined with interviewing, with the work that they've done, what they like to do, thought process. You can also do some assessing around that if you like as well from an assessment process. So
the Hogan assessment, kind of a profiling platform of some sort?
Yeah, there's different ones. The ones that we use are leadership assessment, and it'll have things like strategy, innovation, and through a series of questions, it kind of touches upon, do they have an innovative mindset? And you'll get a higher or lower score. And it doesn't mean that for sure they're an innovator, but it means that it's the mindset that they have, that they think a little bit differently, and that it's likely that they have some good innovation and think innovatively, etc.
What sort of characteristics are we looking for when if we're looking for somebody to come in and help us innovate in an organization? What essentially are we looking for in that kind of person's? Is it a personality thing? Is it a technical background? What are the things that we would look for?
That's a good question. So, are you looking for someone to innovate in HR? Are you looking for someone to innovate in marketing, innovate in finance? Or are you looking for someone in the technology world, the CIO, and innovate on the technology and implementing new technology? Those would all be different things. It's funny because when you ask that question, we just did some work for a company where they were looking for someone who could really help them innovate around the marketing function, around demand generation and digital marketing. So that's innovation, but it's not the innovation that we're talking about with implementing new systems. AI could involve new systems, but it was just, so it was somebody who had a lot of marketing experience, good technology background, and had done it before, and had learned the lessons. And so it really, you have to also look at the role that the innovation that you're looking for from an innovation standpoint, I would say. So it's a little bit specific, depending on what you're looking for.
Thanks, Mike. Dave, so how can IT leaders gain buy-in from other departments and stakeholders when driving innovation?
Well, this goes back to the human element, right? At the end of the day, I like to think of it as the sandwich. You can do the top down, and you do need that. You need the executive buy-in for whatever change you want to push through. You need to have that strong leadership and the vision, and create a story around what you want to happen. So for example, for us, as we launch new products or we launch new initiatives, we tend to have reorgs quite regularly within Microsoft. So we have to have the over story of why are we doing this, what are we trying to do, have the buy-in from the executive team so that can get pushed down. But then it's also just as important to have the bottom up. You have to have the change champions, the change leaders within the organization, within the business units or departments where you're trying to position the change. Have them be the champions that will make it exciting, make it fun, make everybody want to collaborate with them, and then create kind of the FOMO, right? Well, what's going on over there? I want to be part of that. I want to be involved in this change. So it's really essential to have the top down, the bottom up, and then the over story. Why are we doing this at all? Why should we change? Because the mind for most people will go back to the default of I don't need to change. I've always been doing it this way, why should I change anything?
Yeah, so storytelling is absolutely key to all of this, right? You need to understand where you are today, where you're heading, and what's ultimately going to be the value that you're going to bring to the organization as part of that. Yeah, so. If you could give one piece of advice to an IT leader, Will, who wants to accelerate innovation, what would it be?
You need to communicate with the other stakeholders, the other managers, the executives, and so on. You have to be a great communicator. You have to create trust. People have to trust you. And usually, once those two things are established, you can take them wherever you want, really. But for me, not communicating enough is always the road to problems. If they understand why you're doing something, they're much more likely to go along with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think another key part of innovation is celebrating your wins and celebrating them publicly, making some noise in the company. You know, typical sort of or historically technical aspects of what we do have always been problem solving, always been reactive. We're now becoming way more proactive in terms of how we approach both business and technical challenges, and I think that making that loud and clear that we are bringing value to the organisation is such a key part of what we do. Right? I want to ask the same question to you, David, if you don't mind. Yeah. So, what would you give? What's your advice there?
The advice I always give, similar, is build a collaboration. Our model at Microsoft is designed around collaboration. And in fact, we were discussing this over lunch. We were saying that for us, collaboration is actually measured within our bonus structure. And so that was a pretty radical idea when it was introduced. We look at people's individual accomplishments for sure. That's what they do on their own, and they get paid very well for that. But the two other things that we look at. One is, how do you build on the success of others? So what are you doing that helps them to be successful, and how are you, jokingly sometimes we say, how are you copying their homework? We don't want superstars who are doing things on their own and then basically just repeating everybody else's work. We want them to build on top of what others have done. And third, we also want to see how they contribute to the success of others. So that's built into our compensation plan, and what it does is it forces the trust, the collaboration, basically in a monetary way, to make sure that you've got different stakeholders at the table, and then we're all measured and compensated on similar outcomes. Because otherwise what happens is very quickly things fall apart, and realistically there's never one person that makes things happen in an organization. You really do need that team, and oftentimes the informal collaboration to happen for things to move ahead very quickly.
Wow, interesting. So KPIs are part of that. It's being deployed for KPIs.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it goes back to KPIs, right? Everybody has the basic metrics that you're looking at. So that's the other thing that we do at Microsoft is the same KPIs are applied pretty much to everybody in the organization. And they flow down through the departments, but if you look at the levels above me, 2 or 3 levels above, they share the same KPIs. And same for my team and their teams. They share all the same KPIs. So everybody has similar outcomes. We don't split them too much. We try to keep it to the same. And that way everybody's reporting on the same structure, everybody's looking at the same numbers. No one can say, well, here's my version of the numbers and yours is no good, right? That kind of also drives the collaboration from a metric standpoint.
Mike, same question to you if you don't mind. What advice would you give?
So there's been some great points already with respect to collaboration. I think that realistically, we would look for individuals who have the experience, who've done it before. You talk about collaboration, mindset, having a framework, knowing what you're doing with respect to innovation, etc. But I can't really add too much more.
Yeah, acceleration of innovation. On one side, it's obviously what we're all aiming for. We're all trying to accelerate wherever possible. But I also think that we have to kind of slow down before we speed up, in as much as we have to ensure cybersecurity is a big part of this. Also framework is also key. I think at putting everybody on the right path. Internally, what we've done is created really a playbook of technology and innovation as an office. And we've clearly defined kind of the roles and the responsibilities of the team, but also a mission statement. What are we actually trying to achieve? What value do we bring to the organization, and how are we going to approach that and show value? So acceleration is an interesting one, because we also have to think about, as I say, everything else that comes along with that, right? Mike, how do I guess IT leaders sustain kind of a culture of innovation long term?
So you mentioned framework, and I'll go back to that one as well. I mean, you're going to want to be leading the team with some great ideas. You're going to include everybody, collaboration. Long term, I think a big piece is whenever you're working on innovation, you're going to get resistance at some point in an organization. So you're going to need, whether it's the framework, whether it's talking to senior management, getting things approved, you're going to have to push through, whether it's people on the team, wherever in the organization, you have to push through challenges where there's going to be people saying, oh, I don't want to change, I don't want to do this. Part of innovation is change. So I think you've got to be a change champion. So you think about individuals that lead projects, you're going to have to be the driving force behind it, live what you say, show examples of trying. You might fail in certain things, but then you keep pushing. You have to have a mechanism for when you fail on something. How do you work around that and continue forward? So there's a mindset and a discipline around continuing to innovate, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Change management is key to that, as you say. You're spot on. Same question to you, Will, if you don't mind.
Yeah, like just within a small IT team, it kind of harkens back to the keynote presentation this morning, where you have to, as a leader of a team, you have to bring the passion. You can't expect passion to appear if you're not bringing it yourself. And with innovation, I find that over time, being innovative becomes more difficult because you start to get a bit set in your ways, and maybe you had the last project you had to push through was, there's a lot of friction. But trying to really stay mindful, it's reflect on the drive to work about, I'm going to come forward with ideas today. And it might be simple too. When we think in innovation work, sometimes I think it's easy to think big, but think small. That ticket that comes in and my help desk person's working on it, and I say to them like, hey, can we streamline that, or can we fix that, or or people on my team, I'll say to them, what's frustrating you? What do you want to improve? What would you rather work on? And then all it does is it triggers brainstorming, and then once brainstorming comes forward, you're researching, and then you're coming up with ideas, and then you're innovating. So that's what I try to do, is just try to always be leaning forward from the perspective of thinking about something. I just want to say too, there's so many situations where I'll say to my team, well, what about this? Why don't we make this change? Why don't we go here? And then we'll just walk through the thought process, and then within half hour, I'm like, you know what, let's not do that, but I'm glad we had this discussion.
Dave, same thing. How can we sustain that culture?
I think it's super important, in addition to what was mentioned, is generating energy. Right? There always has to be a constant push against organizational inertia. By default, the human mind goes back to a protection mindset. We've always done it this way. Why should we change? But to flip that mindset, you need two things. You need people to feel comfortable, that there's room to innovate, that there's room to grow. And you also need the leadership team to generate energy. It has to be exciting. When they come to work, they have to think, this is exciting, this is going to be fun, there's lots of things that we can do, there's a wealth of possibilities. And that takes sustained energy from the leadership team for ourselves to show up as leaders and say, I'm going to be energetic this morning, despite all the things that are not going right. I'm going to put that aside and think of what's the opportunity. And then the teams feel that. The teams can feel that because they read the energy of their leaders, they can feel how the leaders are seeing it, and then everybody wants to join the bandwagon. So once you've got kind of that energy, generating energy mindset, people want to come on board, they want to innovate, and the ideas typically come through. That is a question of picking the best ideas out of that, right? Which of these are the greatest ideas, and leaving that room open for people to be curious and try things out.
Absolutely, I totally agree, 100%. If you saw Steve Harper's keynote, one of the big things it's how you turn up at the beginning of the day. It sets the precedence for everything that happens forward. So love is where it's at in some respects, right? And I think it plays such a big role in what we do and how we inspire other people. So I will open it up to the audience if anybody would like to have one last question before we close things out. We're good? Excellent. All right, well, thank you everybody for